All right, let's dive in. Ready to become a culinary rock star.
Always ready to talk food.
So, I've been going through all these amazing sources you gave me. They're all about leveling up our cooking skills. And guess what?
What's that?
It all comes back to the basics. No matter how fancy you want to get in the kitchen, it's the fundamentals that make all the difference.
You got it. It's like even pro chefs, the ones with Michelin stars and those crazy cooking shows,
Yeah.
even they're always practicing the basics.
Right. It's not like you just learn it once and you're done.
It's a constant journey, like always refining, always getting better. It's kind of cool, actually.
I love that. These sources we've got are full of these tips of the day, those little nuggets of wisdom. Me too. Like perfect bite-sized pieces to help us really nail the fundamentals.
Yeah, and honestly, sometimes those simple things make the biggest difference. Think about like knife skills. It's not just about being fast, it's about safety too, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I think it also affects how things cook. Like if you chop veggies unevenly, some pieces will be overcooked and others undercooked.
Exactly. And even how your food looks on the plate, it's all connected. Like I remember this one time I was watching this chef and he was making a salad. It was just a simple salad, but the way he was slicing the tomatoes, it was like art.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he was using these perfectly ripe tomatoes. The flavor was incredible just because of how we treated the ingredients.
That reminds me of this one time a friend showed me the right way to chop onions. It's called the rock chop.
Ah,
It completely changed my life. Like chopping onions used to be such a chore for me, but now it's almost fun.
I love that. It's amazing how the right technique can change everything. Speaking of simple things done right, one of the sources had this really classic pasta recipe. Should we break it down?
Yeah, let's do it. It's a great example, right? Everyone loves pasta.
Exactly. Okay, so first things first, cooking the pasta. The source talks about avoiding mushy noodles. We've all been there.
Yeah. Soggy pasta is the worst.
The worst. So the source emphasizes following the package directions, which is super important,
Mm.
but it also talks about understanding what al dente really means.
Al dente. Okay, remind me what that is again.
Sure. It basically means to the tooth in Italian, and it describes that perfect texture where the pasta is cooked through but still has a little bite to it. It shouldn't be mushy, but it shouldn't be crunchy either. It's that sweet spot in between.
Oh, I see. That makes sense.
And another tip they mentioned is using some of that pasta water in your sauce. Have you ever done that?
I have. But to be honest, I always thought it was just to thin out the sauce if it was too thick.
Well, it can do that, but there's actually a more important reason.
What is it?
The starch in the pasta water acts as an emulsifier.
An emulsifier.
Yeah. It helps the sauce cling to the pasta better and creates that silky smooth texture like you get in a fancy restaurant.
Oh, wow. So it's not just a random step. It actually has a purpose.
Exactly. It's all about those little details.
Speaking of details, let's talk timing. I remember this one time I was trying to make carbonara. I was so focused on getting the sauce perfect that I totally forgot about the pasta.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it ended up overcooked and mushy. What a mess. It's funny how sometimes the simplest things can trip us up.
Right. It's all part of the learning process. Overcooking pasta, it happens to the best of us. A good tip is to start checking it a minute or two before the package says.
That's a great tip. Another one I've struggled with is overcrowding the pan when I'm sautéing vegetables.
Oh, that's a classic one. I used to do that all the time. You think you're saving time by throwing everything in at once, but it ends up backfiring.
Totally. Everything just ends up steaming instead of getting that nice sear. So, okay, what about people with dietary restrictions or those who want to try substitutions?
I think it's all about understanding what each ingredient is doing in the recipe, right? Like,
Hmm.
if you need a dairy-free substitute, there are tons of plant-based options out there now.
Like what?
Like cashew cream. It can be amazing in sauces. You soak cashews in water and then blend them up, and it creates this creamy, rich texture that's really similar to heavy cream. And for gluten-free substitutions, you can look at things like quinoa, rice flour, almond flour. There are so many options.
Oh, well, so many. After diving deep into all this, I'm feeling inspired to get back in the kitchen.
Me too. It makes you realize that cooking can be so approachable.
It's not about being a master chef overnight. It's about taking those little steps, mastering the basics, and having fun along the way.
Absolutely. And you know what? Sometimes the best discoveries happen when you're just experimenting and trying new things. Don't be afraid to play around in the kitchen.
So for all you listeners out there, here's your challenge. Pick one of those tips of the day that really resonated with you. Maybe it's practicing your knife skills, trying that pasta recipe, or experimenting with a new ingredient.
And remember, those fancy dishes you see in magazines or on TV, they all started with someone mastering the basics. So go out there, embrace the journey, and see what you can create. You might surprise yourself.
Who knows? Maybe you'll even create your own signature dish that becomes a family favorite. Thanks for joining us on this culinary deep dive.
It's been a delicious conversation.
Until next time, happy cooking.
Happy cooking.